What if keeping your word meant suffering the most horrific death imaginable? Not a quick death in battle, but a slow, calculated, and artistically cruel masterpiece of pain. Today, we are diving deep into the dark side of Roman history. We're going past the glorious legions and the marble statues and into a story of honor so absolute, it's almost insane. This is the story of Marcus Atilius Regulus, a Roman hero whose name became a legend, not for how he lived, but for the truly, graphically, horrifying way he chose to die. Our story begins in the middle of the First Punic War. The two superpowers of the ancient Mediterranean, Rome and Carthage, are locked in a brutal, bloody struggle for control. And Rome has a star general, Marcus Atilius Regulus. He's a winner. He's tough, successful, and the very model of a Roman consul. He leads a Roman invasion of North Africa, right to Carthage's doorstep. At first, he's unstoppable. He wins battle after battle. He's so confident, he offers the Carthaginians a peace treaty that is so ridiculously insulting, they basically laugh in his face. And then, they decide to stop messing around. Carthage hires a Spartan mercenary general, a military genius named Xanthippus, and he completely and utterly crushes Regulus's army. It's a catastrophe for Rome. Almost the entire Roman force is wiped out. And Regulus, the celebrated hero, is dragged back to the city of Carthage in chains. A prisoner. For 5 long years, he rots in a Carthaginian dungeon. His glorious career is over. He's a failure, a disgrace. But then, the Carthaginians come to him with a deal. They're tired of the war. They want to negotiate a prisoner exchange. So, they make Regulus an offer. Go back to Rome, they say. Go to the Senate and convince them to make a deal. Convince them to return our captured generals in exchange for you and the other Roman prisoners. Give us your word, your solemn oath as a Roman, that if you fail, you will return to Carthage. They thought they were being clever. They were sending a broken man home, a man who had tasted freedom and wouldn't want to give it up. They thought he would stand before the Senate and beg for his own life. They had completely misunderstood what it meant to be a Roman. Regulus accepts. He gives his oath, and he sails back to Rome. When he arrives, the city treats him like a returning hero. His family is overjoyed. The senators are ready to listen. All he has to do is make the case for the prisoner swap, and he can live out the rest of his days in peace and comfort. But when he stands before the Senate, he does the exact opposite. In a speech that would become one of the most famous in Roman history, he tells the Senate to reject the deal. He argues that the Carthaginian generals they hold are young, skilled, and vital to the enemy's war effort. The Roman prisoners, on the other hand, including himself, were old, beaten, and not worth the trade. He told them, I have seen the standards of Rome hanging in the temples of Carthage. I have seen the weapons of our soldiers stripped from them without a single drop of blood being shed. A soldier who has been captured once is worthless. He argues that to make this deal would be a sign of weakness. It would show Carthage that Rome could be bargained with. He told them that his own life was meaningless compared to the honor and security of the Roman Republic. He chose Rome. The Senate was stunned. They agreed with his logic, but they couldn't believe his courage. They begged him to stay. His own wife and children pleaded with him. They told him an oath made to an enemy, under duress, wasn't binding. But for Regulus, an oath was an oath. He had given his word, and he would keep it. He turned away from his weeping family, walked out of the Senate, and made his way back to the ship that would take him back to Carthage and to his death. When he arrived back in Carthage, the Carthaginians were furious. They weren't just angry that he had sabotaged the deal. They were enraged that he had used them, that he had made them look like fools. And they decided to make an example of him. They decided his death wouldn't just be a punishment, it would be a work of art. What happened next is the stuff of nightmares. According to the Roman historians, first they cut off his eyelids. Imagine that, being unable to close your eyes. Ever. They forced him into a small box, facing the brutal North African sun. For days, he was forced to stare into that blinding, burning light. Unable to blink, unable to find a moment of darkness, his eyes slowly drying out, scorching in their sockets, while his mind was denied the relief of sleep. But that was just the beginning. After days of this agonizing torture, when he was half-mad from sleep deprivation and pain, they brought out the main event, a wooden box, or a barrel, just big enough to hold a man. And its insides were lined with long, sharp, iron spikes. They shoved him inside. The spikes weren't long enough to kill him quickly. They were designed to pierce the flesh, to shred muscle, to scrape against bone. And then, they closed the lid, and they rolled him down a hill. With every rotation, a new set of spikes would dig into his body. His skin would be torn to ribbons. His bones would be broken, but the space was so tight, he couldn't even scream properly. All he could do was feel every single, agonizing revolution as his body was mangled into a bloody pulp. The stories say they would roll him, and then stop, and then roll him again, prolonging the agony for as long as possible. His final fate is debated. Some say he died in that barrel. Others, that he was placed in a chest with elephants, to be trampled and crushed. The Romans themselves weren't sure of the details, only that it was a death of unimaginable horror. When the news of his death reached Rome, his family was given 2 Carthaginian prisoners as compensation. And in their grief and rage, they enacted their own horrific revenge, allegedly torturing them to death in a basement. In the end, was the story of Regulus's torture true? Or was it a piece of Roman propaganda, invented to dehumanize the Carthaginians and justify their own brutality in the wars? We may never know for sure, but what we do know is that for the Romans, Regulus became the ultimate symbol of fides, of faithfulness. He was the man who kept his promise, even when that promise led him into the depths of hell. A terrifying, graphic, and unforgettable lesson, written in blood and pain, and etched forever into the heart of Roman history.